Live from the podcast studio, this is From Long Distance to Marriage with Rich and Andrea. We're a once long-distance couple who closed 5,000 miles of distance and are now happily married.
We talk long distance, marriage and relationships. Hello and welcome to episode 61 From Long Distance to Marriage. This week we're going to be revisiting communication, which we talk about frequently, but we're going to be talking about the limitations of verbal dialogue and other forms of communication, as well as really when it's appropriate just to not communicate and just to lead with actions and examples.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Any admin first?
No.
No, okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
So this applies really for any relationship. It's obviously going to be harder in long distance if the distance is still there, as in, you know, you can do it when you're together on a visit in person, but if you are separated by the miles, then you're going to be, you know, you unable to act and be non-verbal in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind, but you can still, there are still certain principles of it that you can put into motion. So for example, one of the things is you can. So long distance has the challenge that there may be a lot of things to talk about, you know. So something we hear quite a lot about is one person's been really quiet, or they're not necessarily responsive to certain things, or, you know, maybe it comes back to love languages. They're not very open with certain things, and it makes the dialogue quite difficult, and that can make the other person feel a bit worried or frustrated, or do they feel the same way as I do and whatever. And so you may say, okay, let's talk about that and communicate that, and that can be effective, but sometimes it's about leading by example. Sometimes what you need in any relationship, and I think probably more so when the distance isn't there, but it's just some leadership. I know this is something that we've sort of dealt with, isn't it? Sometimes it's just do it, or in a lot of cases when someone starts to do something, it just influences the other person. And
Can you give an example, like a bit of a concrete example? This might be a bit abstract, I think.
Well, I suppose, like, you know, if you talk about, say, fitness, it's somewhat, if you're doing something, you know, if you're starting to make that change and start to take your health, maybe eat better or just work out more, then it can just inspire the people around you to think, actually, you know, they're doing it, I can do the same too. You can have the conversation in advance, but that conversation could be difficult. It could be, I think you need to work out, I want us to do this together. And you know what I mean? It can feel a bit parental or attacky, like, what do you mean I need to work out? You know, whereas you can just say, okay, I'm doing this for me, and it has the knock-on effect that the other person notices it, or the people in your life notice it. And yeah, that's just one example, but it applies to kind of everything. It's, oh, I noticed, if you're married or you live together, it's, oh, I really noticed you're taking more care around the house. You know, actually, you're right, we could be a bit more house proud. And you know, people aren't stupid, and people observe and notice things. So sometimes a conversation, you know, that communication that is advocated, and we still advocate, but sometimes the communication can feel a bit negative, a bit like you're being picked on, even if you've got the purest intentions in the world. Just the nature of that conversation can feel that way. And also, you know, sometimes it can be a bit exhausting just to talk all the time, and, oh, we've got to do this now, we've got to do that now. And so I just think on the flip side to that is just, if you are the person that's noticed something, then just take charge of it. I mean, this works too. We were talking about date nights recently, and if you say, hey, get your clothes on, we're not that you'd be naked, but, you know, get some nice clothes on. We're going out for...
Get your clothes on.
We're going out for a date. You know, we're going to see a movie, we're going out for dinner.
I think that's a really important kind of, you know, the few examples you've had. I think sometimes, depending on the situation, and especially if it's been an ongoing, not necessarily point of contention, but an area that you both have addressed before, sometimes a conversation can almost make it worse, or make it feel worse, but that doesn't mean that communication in some way isn't the key. And yeah, by just doing something, it does set that example, and it can make it a bit less, not maybe confrontation is the closest word, but
I still say this is communication, but it's non-verbal.
Oh, yeah.
So you're still saying, And, you know, it's not a body language type thing. There's always that thing of, only 10% of communication is verbal, the rest is body language. But this is non-verbal in the sense of you're taking action. And that just really inspires. And I think also it works the other way. You know, people can really easily drag each other down. It's like, I want to sit on the couch all day. The other person's going to go, yeah, I can do that. There's no effort for me to do that. You know, we all know how easy it is to be lazy, to just eat junk food all day. And that's really easy to do that. There's no effort involved in that. So, you know, you may need to kick yourself up the arse a little bit to get going, but it's like, do you know what, I'm going to just tidy up around the house a little bit. And then the other person might say, oh yeah, this does look nice. Yeah, I'm going to make an effort to do this too. You know, I will, I don't know, start by making the bed. It doesn't have to be like redecorating, but just kind of take that charge. And I think
doing that is also communicating to your partner what you want, by showing them. And like you said, people aren't stupid, and you know, we've had periods in our relationship where one or the other of us is doing that, is just kind of going, do you know what, I'm just going to do this. And you know, you've done it with certain things and I've noticed it, and there's still that feeling of, okay, he's doing this, which means I'm not doing enough of it, or that, you know, this isn't happening in our relationship. And you can still feel a little bit like, ooh, yeah, I recognize this is happening. And again, not defensive, but there's just, you kind of know it, but you don't have to have that maybe awkward conversation around whatever it is that isn't happening.
Yeah, and also, this can also solve a lot of frustrations that may or may not be known about. So, again, one of the things we hear quite a lot is laziness in a partner. Like, oh, he doesn't do anything, he just sits...
Or lack of motivation.
He just sits down and smokes weed all day and plays video games, doesn't do anything. How do I get him to do something? That's the kind of conversation, if you were to have verbally, where it's going to be really hard for him not to feel attacked, because you're coming at him, or her, whatever, you're coming at that person with negatives. Now, it may be that actually, by you leading by example, it makes that person feel like, oh, I don't need to do that because they're doing it.
It's hard, though, because this doesn't have 100% success rate. You know, like, there's been multiple things in our marriage that we've harped on about each other for years, and then one of us will just start, like, okay, fine, I'll take care of it, and that behaviour still doesn't change.
Yeah, because what I was going to say there was, sometimes doing it makes the person who isn't doing it feel like, oh, I haven't got to worry about that. But then it becomes almost like a parent and child relationship. And so if you're not able to have the verbal communication, you know, it's not effective. And then if taking charge of it and the other person just thinks, great, something for me not to have to worry about, I can sit here getting stoned all day, then you need to look for something else. You know, maybe you do need to have a more serious conversation. Maybe you do need to say, look, this is what I need and expect from a partner in a relationship, and that's either you or it's not you. You know, but sometimes that does need to be said. You know, we're lucky we haven't really had to do that.
Yeah.
And
some days I feel like it.
Yeah, but there will be the relationships where that does happen, and especially if you're younger, maybe there's less experience with relationships, and again, especially if you're new to living together, then you've got that trying to figure out, how do I go from my life being all about me and doing what I want when I want to suddenly sharing it. And you know, so this doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in the first week. There's that bedding in period that we've spoken about before. But if at some point it's not happening, then you do need to have that conversation. You do need to state your boundaries and say, this is what, you know, you need to show up in these areas. So don't be afraid of that, I think.
Yeah. But I think, like, yeah, you need to try, you know, it's always going to start with, hey, could you do this? Or, oh, why aren't you doing this? And then, yeah, you need to try, okay, well, that doesn't work, so I'm going to lead. But you need to be careful that it doesn't get up or end up being like some form of battle. Kind of like, I guess what I'm imagining is, what's that movie with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn, The Breakup, where they just, like, it's almost like a battle to show each other, like, well, this is how it should be, or whatever.
Yeah, it becomes attrition. And the other thing is, it feels, it's more acceptable to ask for help when you're already doing something. So, let's say we're both sitting on the couch, and I say, oh, can you do that? You can justifiably say to me, why the fuck don't you do that? You're doing, you know, we're both doing nothing. But what we both have done frequently is one of us will be doing something, and you say, oh, while I'm doing this, could you just do this for me? Maybe I'm mowing the lawn and you'll say, oh yeah, I'll do this in the kitchen, or whatever. It doesn't matter what the examples are, but the point is,
it feels like divide and conquer kind of. Yeah,
people can see the effort being made. They can say, well, actually, yeah, that does need doing. They're busy. They're busy doing something that benefits both of us, to making the house look nice or whatever it may be. I'm happy to do that. So basically what I'm saying is evaluate, just be conscious of what you're doing when you're asking. If you're doing nothing and you're asking for favours, is there a reason why you can't do it? And if they turn around and say, why have I got to do that? Have you got a good answer for that? I mean, we've had it where we just say, we've just gone back into the gym, haven't we? And it's like, I can't move, my legs are like, I need some help. But you've got a reason for that. If it's just, I can't be bothered, then they kind of have every right to turn around and say no. But if you're doing something and you're busy and you're leading by example, then they're going to be more inclined most of the time.
Yeah, and I think it will get to a point. We had an episode a while back now with David Feldman where it was kind of, if you really need something...
Episode 47, dealing with criticism.
How did you know that was the number?
Because I was talking to someone about it recently.
Okay, well, 47. So yeah, it was all about avoiding criticism, and it's, so if you've asked someone to do something, they don't really pay attention, you try to lead by example, it still doesn't seem to be going through, the next step is going to be a little bit more verbal communication, but not putting it on them. It's, when you don't do this, it makes me feel like this, and I think that's a really good thing to do, but the fact is it doesn't always work. I think we've both tried that in our relationship, and it still doesn't necessarily get through to one another.
Yeah.
And then what? What are you supposed to do? Like, when I do it to you and you just don't connect, and you do it to me and I just don't get it, like, what now?
Well, I mean, so David gave the really, really good point about, he elaborated on the hierarchy of needs, which I thought was great. So for anyone who hasn't listened to that episode, one, we recommend you do, because it's all about how to avoid criticism. And when David says never criticize your partner, invariably the response he gets is, how do I get them to change? So he dealt with that. So if there's anything you're dealing with, then we recommend that episode. But essentially we had a conversation around, the example I gave was, let's say that I always leave my clothes on the floor and it drives you crazy. How would he handle that? And one of the things he said was, you have a hierarchy of needs in a relationship, write up what yours are, and it could be that the most important things to me are just love and attention and being provided for and whatever, and then the next least important thing is whatever. And if clothes not being on the floor isn't on that list, it's not worth the conversation. You'll say, do you know what, I'll just pick up myself and fold them, it's not a big deal. He also made the point that he would never expect his partner to do something he wasn't capable of doing himself. So if his spouse made him dinner, then he'd be extremely grateful for it, but we'd never expect it. So it's little things. It's a really valuable episode, and it can really shift some thinking on expectations of who brings what to the table, I think.
Particularly for men. I
think that's true. But then the other thing around this sort of communication is, this is worth a conversation up front in a relationship, maybe, and maybe you can revisit it down the line. But, people would have different desires as well. So there are some people who kind of want to be led in a relationship, the so-called, I'm going to say dominant, submissive, but not in a kinky way. It's just...
personality, maybe.
Yeah, like that person takes charge. Again, not really in a parental kind of way, but it's just, I trust them, they make these decisions, I follow their lead. If you're the kind of person that needs that, and your partner isn't bringing that, you're going to feel frustrated. And it may be that you don't really realise that's why you're frustrated until you get it. And there's, actually, that's been the cause of... And that's kind of what we're trying to get at in this episode, is that you don't... verbal communication is great, but you don't always know what the problem is. You can just say, I feel really frustrated, I'm really irritated, I can't put my finger on it. So then, maybe you do know, actually, yeah, I know that I want my partner to be the leader.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can't have opinions, it doesn't mean that you can't disagree, it doesn't mean you have nothing to do but go shopping, it just means that maybe you haven't got that burden.
Well, I think, there's a lot of different personality types, and I think a lot of people are leaders, and they strive in that sort of setting, and other people are, like, excellent supporters. And I think that's kind of similar to what we are. I think you're more of a natural-born leader. I'm like an executor, and, give me good directions, and I will make something happen great, and I will get it done quickly, and So, but I think also there's different aspects of relationship where you're a leader and where you're kind of the supporter. So there's certain areas where you're very much the leader. There's areas where I certainly am more of a leader, and you just have to know what those roles are.
And this is where the conversation around equality isn't necessarily true. So I would say there's equality in the sense that you just said, sometimes I take the lead, sometimes you take the lead. It's equal in that we don't say, hang on, that's my job, or that's your job. But I think there are some people who say everything we do has to be 50-50. And I think you're going to run into problems with that, because some situations one person just knows more about it, has more experience about it, or is just right about it, and the other person is, well, no, actually I'm not sure, and that can prevent the right decision being made just because they're maybe a bit nervous about it, maybe they're slightly ignorant on it. You know, let's just say money, for example, because it's an obvious one. If one person has more knowledge and experience about what to do with money and the other person's like, oh, I don't know, then, and you end up doing nothing, then that's caused a problem. So I think the real equality there is you let the person who has the knowledge and experience say, okay, this is what I recommend and this is what I think we should do. And then in another situation, let's think of an example. Help me think of an example. Maybe the food
cooking,
you eat. Yeah. Then that person says, okay, this is how I'm going to take charge here. So you've got the equality across the total, like, sort of your ability to have influence, but you don't make every single decision 50-50. I think you're kind of asking for trouble if you do that. But
50-50 is just kind of a made-up thing, really. I mean, I think you should each have equal say and sway in a relationship, but I think kind of the examples that you just gave, like, you've worked kind of in financial companies before, you're much more versed in different things with finance. I have really good common sense when it comes to that kind of stuff, but maybe not the, like, I wouldn't say formal education, but let's use that for lack of a better term. But it won't even occur to me that we should be doing something different with our money, and you'll say, oh, you know, what about this? And then you'll ask for my opinion, we'll look into it, you'll bring me back some facts, we'll discuss it together, you take the lead on that, but my opinion is still very much...
Yeah, I want you to be comfortable with it. And if you're not, then I'll take the time to say, this is why I think it's important.
Yeah, and then, like, with the food thing, you know, I'm pretty much the shopper, the cooker, the planner when it comes to our food. And there's actually quite a lot of responsibility to that. It might sound silly, but, like, there is. And then when you're saying, like, oh, I really need to get my, you know, like you mentioned, we're getting back in the gym, trying to get a bit more fit and health conscious. You know, you said something the other day about how you've been feeling. And I said, oh, maybe you should try cutting gluten out like I have. I'll make sure to change the shopping list so that... Yeah. So it may sound like trivial stuff, but actually it just takes the worry off of the other one, because that's an area where you can lead effectively.
Well, and that's the thing as well, is your frustrations and stress can just, maybe without you knowing it, but they can be massively just influenced by you having too much on your plate. So if the other person's leading in certain areas and there's something for you not to worry about, that frees up a lot of mental energy for other things. And, you know, going back to, you said before, some people are leaders, some people aren't so much. I think the elephant in the room with relationships is compatibility. So we obviously we advocate, and everyone advocates working on it. You know, find the resolution, discuss things, have the conversations, take charge here and there. And the phrase you hear all the time is, oh, you know, if he loves you, he'll do this. If you love each other, it'll work out. But the truth is, like, a lot of people love each other and still get divorced, still break up, things still go wrong. Love isn't always enough. I don't think. I think that, you know, that can sound a bit harsh, but you're just not always compatible. And I think, and this may be particularly pertinent for long distance relationships, that I think it's very easy to fall in love with the idea of someone more so than the person. And what I mean by that is maybe less of an issue now that there's so much more video communication, but when you're introduced to someone through distance, you know, you only get exposure to a certain bit of them. Maybe that's their voice on a video chat. You know, so you're gaming together, and you've got the headphones on, then you'll hear their voice. You can have a really, really sexy voice, and then suddenly that builds up a picture in your mind of oh, that person's got a real allure to them, you know. Equally, you may see a picture of them and think, oh yeah, you know, they're a beautiful person. And the conversations that you have early on are going to be normally pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly you've got this, oh yeah, there's this beautiful person. And because we're so attracted to what we perceive to be attractive, we immediately see that person as positive and good. So you can kind of forgive a lot, I think. So what I'm saying is you have this idea of, oh, I love this person's voice, it's really, really sexy, or their picture's fantastic, or whatever. And then you kind of go into talking to them with them already being good in your mind, like a positive thing. So then over time you just build up who you think they are, almost like a character in a book to an extent. It's like, this is what they look like to me in my mind. And that, I think that can be surprisingly powerful, and it can last a surprisingly long time. So if you're bumping into, you know, certain issues that maybe you wouldn't expect to early on, it's worth probably just taking a step back and thinking, do I love this person, or do I love what I perceive them to be in my mind?
And on that, you know, maybe, you know, a step further, when you know, yeah, I actually do love this person, but if there are things that, needs of yours that aren't being met, or pet peeves of yours that they're constantly doing, that's also something you need to take a step back with and say to yourself, you know, kind of have that internal conversation. Is this actually a shortcoming of theirs, or is this an unrealistic expectation of mine?
Totally.
And maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe it is a bit unrealistic, but it's still really, really important to you, and it's just something that they're not valuing at all, and you need to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think, again, this will always involve verbal communication, but I think a big part of what we're talking about here is looking at the nonverbal cues and kind of hints that you're seeing in your partner's behavior, their habits, the traits that they're kind of showing you. I mean, we had kind of a conversation, God, it's probably been 3-4 years ago now. We were actually away in America, and I wasn't even aware of it, but I'd obviously been communicating to you with my behavior, my body language, that I was really unhappy about something. And, you know, we had a moment alone. You kind of, I wouldn't say corner, but you kind of did corner me and said, look, I noticed that you've been acting this, and this way towards me, and I get the feeling that it's because of something I'm doing. And it just opened up a conversation, and it was one of those things, like where you said a few minutes ago, like sometimes you don't even know what's bothering you. I didn't even realize I'd been acting that way. I didn't even realize that I've been unhappy with some things. But just you saying to me, like, look, what's going on? I'm happy to take responsibility for whatever this is. And it just kind of opened the floodgates. And not that I was like bawling or anything, but it was like, I feel like this, and I just feel like this doesn't matter, and da-da-da. And, you know, we really made some good... Do you remember that, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but...
Yeah, well, we don't need to get into that.
No.
But it's just, you know, so, yeah, it might have ended up in a verbal kind of conversation, but you were picking up on those physical, behavioural things.
And if I'd waited for you to initiate it, it may never have happened because you...
Or it could have been really messy.
Because the thing is, you know, humans, we're like a really adaptable species. We get used to anything... or we get used to a lot of things very quickly. Mm-hmm. You know, and especially when it's kind of a gently change over a period of time. It's, you know, you wake up one day and you're unhappy, you know you're unhappy. But if it happens over a longer period of time that something's bothering you or you're frustrated, you kind of just get used to it. And then that's quite dangerous because
you kind of accept unhappy.
You accept it and you forget what it used to be like. You know, so just kind of using the example you gave, it can take someone external saying, this isn't normal for you. So it's good to just... Not everything has to be dealt with on day one, but it's just remember what normal and good is for you so that you can keep that online. You know, you don't want to veer off too much and get sucked into it, because then 6 months down the line, this is your new normal and it's actually really bad for you.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a balance of speaking up and standing up for yourself, and also kind of realizing your partner's needs too in this. And again, I can't stress how important it is to know your partner's tells or the giveaways that something's bothering them. You know, like you can tell if I'm kind of messing with my fingernails.
Yeah, and that's something I could tell, you know, even when we used to talk on webcam, I could see, because it's a physical thing you do.
It's a tick I do when I'm upset and stressed. I'm like rubbing my
thumb.
Yeah.
And you may not even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
Maybe you do, but I can tell immediately there's something that you need to talk about. And I'm sure everyone has something. It doesn't have to be that physical. It can be that you're really quiet today, or I used to work with someone who would sort of play with his hair a little bit if he was stressed at work. And so I think everyone has some kind of giveaway. It can be that you're talking a lot more than normal, or you're not talking at all, or you seem distracted, or you're just snapping at me. Like, just look for the sign, and then say, hey, what's bothering you? You know, you can initiate that conversation. It doesn't have to be from the person who has the problem.
And I think something else that you need to do it in the right way, not when you're necessarily seeing those little ticks that means they're worried or they're stressed, or, you know, kind of little habit things. But say, for instance, your partner's tone with you has been really short and impatient and snappy, and you know that means there's something wrong with them. You can't do anything more damaging than go, the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
We're guilty of it, and I think men probably do it more to women because women can be so much more emotionally reactive, and something can just set us off and we go because we keep so much in. But that is so damaging, and it's led to a lot of fights. And I remember talking to a friend at work. She's like, don't you hate it when you've had an argument with them and then you're shitty because they've made you upset, and then it's, are you gonna act like this all day? It's like, well, yeah, because you fucking made me act this way.
Yeah, it's true. We're not perfect in this, but if someone is opening up to you about anything, I mean, even like we're talking about now, or if they're opening up about their sexual fantasies or anything, the last thing you should do is make them feel stupid or bad,
be judgy or
judge it. Just listen to it.
But if you do need to ask, even if they're upsetting you, if they're being really snappy, I think we've had multiple episodes where we don't ever want, we've said we don't ever want to hurt each other. It's never our intention to be a dick to one another, or like
but it happens.
Yeah. And sorry, I've forgotten the couple's name. I've gone completely blank.
Marcus and Ashley.
No, the long distance activity.
Sam and Jared.
Yeah, Sam and Jared. Sorry, I'm just losing names. Jared said that thing about always assume good intent. And
yeah.
I don't know that we always have good intent, but sometimes there's no intent with what we say. We're not trying to achieve anything good. We're not trying to achieve anything bad. We're just saying what we feel.
Yeah.
And people are allowed that.
A lot of, we are reactive.
I think
people generally, because if someone says something to you, you respond like that.
Yeah.
So you don't always have time to think, hang on,
what did
they say on that? So a lot of this is practice and trial and error, and then if it goes wrong, like we put in one of our very early episodes, the benefits of arguing. You do learn, hang on, if I say that, they're going to react that way. And that's the benefit of a long-term relationship, is that you learn that person really, really well.
But we're also just human, and in the middle of a serious talk where things are weighed and measured, yes, you should do that. But if you're actually genuinely upset about something and you just come off a bit shitty, that is allowed, but then if you genuinely can't help it because you're really upset or hurting about something, then the responsibility is on your partner to not respond.
That's true.
in an agitated way and go, okay, he or she's acting like this because they're very hurt. I've done something unintentionally to make them feel this way, so now I need to set the tone for this. Okay, what's wrong? You're obviously really upset. Not the fuck's wrong with you. Why are you acting this way?
You have the responsibility to just know when they're getting something off their chest. Whatever they say, you just accept it, and then when it's done, they've got it out and they're purged, and then you can say, okay, should we talk about this?
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be.
And it's hard because you can sometimes feel like you're the punching bag, but when you share a life with someone, sometimes you need to be, at different points in life, everything for them. Whether that's a best friend, lover, hopefully that's continually. Sometimes you might need to be a little bit parental to that person. There's been a lot of times where you've had to be parental to me because I don't have a parent figure here. And, come to you for advice, or maybe call me on some behaviour. We do that for each other.
Yeah, you spend all your time with one person.
Yeah, so sometimes...
They're going to see every aspect of you.
So sometimes you have to suck it up and be the punching bag a little bit. And let them take that out. And then hopefully afterwards they'll realize, look, I don't want to...
But just going back to we touched on the compatibility side of this. I think it's really valuable for most people. If your relationship's going really well and you're 10 years into it and stuff, then maybe less of it. Certainly in the early days, certainly if you're single, certainly if something's bothering you, it'd be good if you just write down bullet points, pros and cons, or just what's that, like freestyle writing, and what's that?
Stream of consciousness.
Yeah, just write pen to paper of what's important to you in a relationship. So don't think about your partner. If you're single, then that doesn't apply. If you're not single, block them out for a minute. This is just about it's a stream of consciousness, the good and bad of what you want in a relationship, what you need in a relationship, what you're willing to put up with in a relationship. Maybe that's, I need someone who leads. I need someone who earns more money than me. I need someone who's proactive. I need someone who X, Y, Z. That's your needs. And then your wants might be, I need someone who's taller than me. I need someone who's physically fit and looks after themselves. I want someone who enjoys the same films as I do. I'm making all this up, by the way. And then the things I'm willing to put up with are, I'm willing to put up with clothes on the floor. I'm willing to put up with them being bad with time. I'm willing to put up with them smoking weed and playing video games all day. So, but you just, if you have that, then you can, and this kind of comes back to the hierarchy of needs that David explained, but if you have that, you can see where your red lines are. And if you're then, and going back to the example of the hypothetical boyfriend who spends all their day playing video games, smoking weed, doing nothing, even if their partner's out working and they're at home and they're doing nothing and they're just frustrating you. You've got this thing, you haven't necessarily got to share it with them, but do you know what, they're crossing 3 of my red lines and I need to have a conversation with them. And if you say to them, look, I need you to turn up in these ways, because actually I am currently the only one working, I come home after a long day and you expect me to then cook and clean and you've done nothing all day. I need this, and this. But then if that, the compatibility aspect of this is if nothing changes and they don't get it and they don't understand where you're coming from and they see you as a nag and they're basically treating you like a mother and they're treating the house like living back at home or a hotel, then it doesn't sound like you're compatible. And harsh but kind of true, really.
I don't know.
And you'll be happier. You can be happier with. But then people get really scared at the prospect of being single voluntarily. Like, oh yeah, but do I want to? What if I don't find someone else? Like, I really like these things about that person. You'll always have something that you like about that person, and people stay in really toxic, unhealthy, bad relationships because there are aspects of that person they like. Because people aren't binary. It's like, oh, he's good, he's bad. Everyone's got good about them. So, but don't let that trick you into staying with them. But you're going to disagree with me there, are you?
Well, no, because I think it depends. I mean, I'm definitely agree that sometimes people aren't compatible and it's not going to work out. But I still think that if someone genuinely loves you and wants to make you happy, not that you should be able to change them, but that they should want to change themselves. So if it is, because let's be honest, neither of us are tidy, neat freaks, but I probably do a lot more around the house than you. And not that you treat me like, oh, you're my mom, you should be sorting this out, this is what it's like. But you're allowed to have conversations like, hey, you're not pulling your weight, sort this out.
Yeah, so this is...
maybe you meant in a much more severe case.
What I was talking about was if you've got these red lines, and I agree with you, if someone... We have both moved the needle on with certain aspects of change for the other person, or just where we've helped each other grow, or just with age and maturity we have changed. But what I'm saying is, if you go to that person and say, none of this is happening for me, and I really, really need these things to be happening, like these are things I need in a relationship. If they turn and say, okay, thanks for sharing, I'll try. And sure, it won't happen overnight, and maybe you'll need to remind them occasionally, then that's fine. But if they turn around and say, oh, why are you nagging me? Like, fuck this, do you know who I am? You should love me for who I am. Because that's always the fallback. You should love me for who I am. Then it doesn't sound like there's a lot of compatibility. And view it like, imagine work, right? You're at your job, maybe you get a new job or whatever it is. At some point, your manager might say to you, these are your responsibilities, this is what we expect from you. I'm not saying the relationship is like work, but what I was going to say was, if you don't do that, they don't have a conversation with you every week and say, okay, I need you to do this. They expect you to be an adult about it and say, this is what I need from you. Then what happens is, if it's not done, eventually you get discipline disciplinary meetings, you get fired, they don't expect to have to tell you every week. And I think it's the same thing in a relationship. You shouldn't have to, some things, minor things, like, oh, why are your clothes on the floor again? Why haven't you put your shoes right? Minor things like that, you're fine. But your big red lines, like, then, and if they're not moving off that couch and they're just doing nothing, and whatever it is that you've put in your needs column, and if none of them are being met, if you say to someone, these are some of the things I need, and you're capable of meeting them, you shouldn't have to remind them every week. A relationship, if the relationship is not a net benefit for you, if your life is not enhanced in some way as a result of that relationship, then you shouldn't be in it.
Yeah. It should be adding value to
I
your
saw
life.
a question someone put online the other day, and they saw, is your, I can't remember the exact words, but it was to the effect of is your life better with your relationship? Now, I didn't really hang around to look at the results of that, but if the answer's no, get out. Or you work to fix it. Obviously, it may just be that you're in a bit of a rut, but
change something.
A relationship should be benefited. Your life should be better with it than without it. Otherwise, what are you doing in it? And I think for me, that's the fundamental thing. And it obviously helps to know who you are. If you desire to be led, or you desire to be the leader, or you desire this, that, and the other, and don't be superficial about it. Like, I really want blonde hair, blue eyes, super fit, vegan, this, that, and the other. There are going to be areas where you have to compromise, and we all know that the person that actually ends up sweeping us off our feet isn't the person that we necessarily pictured in our mind, and that's fine. That's life, isn't it? That's a bit of excitement and drama. So you have to flex and accommodate in some areas, but the big, really important things to you should be understood, communicated, and tried to be met, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what we should probably mention, that people probably don't know, that we offer coaching to couples. So if you're having struggles you think we could help with individually or as a couple, online, we can talk on Skype and whatever, then get in touch with us, send us an email. If you just visit our website, longdistancetomarriage.com, and visit the contact page, let us know, and we can work something out to try and help you. I think this is probably a good episode to mention that from, because we've spoken about a lot of different scenarios, and obviously, what are reasonable expectations, what are reasonable time frames for things, when is it you are the one being unfair, unrealistic with what you need your partner to turn up with? Because that's the other thing, you mentioned this earlier on, if you've got unrealistic expectations, you're going to bump into these same problems. You could get a new partner every week, and these problems will follow you, and at some point you have to realise the issue is one for you to resolve. So yeah, if there's something that you think we could help you with, send us an email or a tweet or Instagram message, or however you find us. Send us a message in a bottle if you think we'll get here. And
that's silly, because we live nowhere near water.
That's true. I said if I think we'll get here, it won't. But
don't give them false hope.
Just get in touch with us.
You're having unrealistic expectations.
That's true, and you've called me up on it. You communicated that to me.
I did very well. But I think it's worth also mentioning on that topic that we both have been through quite a lot together. So no judgment on stuff. If there's anything you want to talk about,
it's true. I mean, we've been married. This will be 9 years this year. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of obviously not everything. Fortunately, there's a lot of things that we haven't gone through, but there's a lot of things we have gone through, and we are happy to help and share our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I hope this shouldn't be a depressing episode. This is just say when you hear people say, if you say I've got this problem, and someone says, "Oh, communicate," because that's all some people ever says. Communicate. You need to communicate, and communication is incredibly important. This is just about the distinction between the types of communication and trying to recognise when communication is not necessarily the best response. Verbal, but sometimes, recognising when, okay, I need to lead by example here, or I'm picking up non-verbal cues from you that something's bothering you, and I'm going to bring it up. I'm not going to wait for you to bring it up, or I've got my wants, needs, and preferences and things I absolutely positively cannot deal with in a relationship. I've got that written down, and my partner's crossing all of those, and I need to have a frank conversation with them. And sometimes you're better off walking away from a relationship. So this is just more a general approach to what communication is, what it looks like, what it can and suppose can't be. It's not always a, hey babe, let's sit down, have a conversation, and so formal about it. But we are emotional creatures, and like I said, we adapt and we respond. So if we see something important to the person that we love, then it should become important to us as well. And this is where that leading by example really comes in.
But I think it's also looking at what your behaviour is displaying to your partner, and if that is actually communicating how you feel. Because if you know, for instance, that, say, the clothes on the floor are a really big deal to your partner, and you leave your clothes on the floor, and they've communicated to you, look, this communicates to me that, you don't care about, the state of our home, or you don't care about my time. Again, okay, picking up someone's clothes off the floor takes 4 seconds, but
it's the principle.
It's the principle of it. And it whether you're at home with the kids and you've got your hands full, you both work very demanding jobs, what you're communicating to me right now, maybe you don't know that, but is that, this job is beneath you, it's for me, or my time isn't as valuable as yours, and maybe they don't know that, but you need to reflect and say, okay, so this is really important to them. What am I actually saying by doing this thing that they don't like?
Yeah, and then you can also think, what's the other reason they're not doing this? One, it's obviously not important to them to put their clothes away, but so for us, for example, we have a hamper. So to leave our clothes on the floor is lazy because there's a hamper right there. So maybe in this hypothetical scenario, the reason they're putting their clothes on the floor is because there isn't a hamper, and it's, well, I don't want to put them back in the wardrobe or the drawers or whatever because I've worn them.
Or I don't want to take them straight down to the laundry.
Yeah. I want to get into bed. So you can also say,
oh, what if we get a hamper?
Yeah, so it can be really important to you that that the clothes aren't on the floor, but that doesn't mean that's where your responsibility to the problem ends, because it's still your annoyance. It's still the thing that bothers you, not them, and you want them to change, but you have to appreciate, oh, well, they're not going to go over to the laundry basket to do that, and maybe, whatever. So you can say, okay, hey, I've got this little hamper or basket or whatever it may be, or even if it's just, I put them in that drawer over there, and I'll take them downstairs in the morning. But if you can work to provide some solution to it, some compromise to it, then you can kind of sort your own problem out there.
Yeah.
And then if they still don't do it, then it's a different conversation, because it's, hey, look, I provided this solution. You've got to walk 2 feet to put your clothes in the laundry basket. Now it just feels like you're disrespectful to me. And it's different. So you can still work to provide a solution or a compromise or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Just be mindful and be respectful and realize, one of the things that really gets me is, people say we're all responsible for our own emotions and nobody should affect our state of mind. Well, that's not really, I don't believe that. I think we're responsible for our reactions, but that doesn't mean that people's actions don't directly affect the state of our emotions. And, when you're someone's partner, that's a big responsibility. You shouldn't have to feel like you're walking on eggshells necessarily, but, be willing to listen that you've done this, it's made me feel this way, and then what are you going to do about it? Yeah,
and especially if it's a longer term relationship, and you know what your partner reacts to. So, both of us we could say something that we know will really, really irritate and upset the other person and be hurtful. So, yeah, you can control your reactions, but you're right. I think that the better you know someone, the greater your responsibility to actually know if I know if I say that, that's going to cause some hurt.
Yeah.
So, well, hopefully this has been helpful.
Yeah.
Like we said, if there's anything you think we can help you with, if you want to do any coaching sessions with us, then just get in touch and we can arrange something. And if you've got any, I'd be interested just to hear if sort of the frustrations along the lines of this episode that you've dealt with, and if you've found resolutions that we've not discussed. We'd love to hear that too. And until next week.
Have a great week, everyone. Bye.